Everyone, it's JMA Friday. We're going to have a look at the month-ahead forecast from the Japanese model. It's just updated. We're also going to have a look at the longer-range update from Japan for the next 3 months. That'll be taking us through the autumn. That's really in anticipation of the autumn forecast that I'll be doing on Sunday, when I'm going to get around 8 long-range models together and see what they're all showing. The Japanese model will make up part of that, but because I've got many other models to look at, I won't be able to look at everything that the Japanese model has to show us, and there is a great deal of information that you can get from the JMA model, so we'll have a look at that in isolation today, really in anticipation of the update for the autumn, the final update for the autumn that will be coming up on Sunday. And we're also going to have a look at the month ahead, which is just updated as we do every Friday. Before I get on with that, though, just say about the ads. There's video ads on my pages at GazWebBiz.com. If you could find your way to hitting play on a video ad, you'll be helping to support GazWebBiz.com. Thanks so much for doing that. The video ad essentially pays for the website, allows me to sit here and talk to you via the website. So thanks for getting involved and doing that. So let's start off with the month ahead update from the Japanese model, as we always do every Friday on JMA Friday. These are 500 millibar heights, first of all, broken down into weekly periods. The first thing that I have to explain, because I have to assume that people are coming on and watching the video for the very first time, is that the British Isles is upside down here. It's an upside down view, but nevertheless it's fairly easy to work out what the model is showing. The first week period will be taking us from the 21st to the 28th of August. Blue extrapolating to low pressure, yellow and orange extrapolating to high pressure. So quite honestly, we're under a trough of low pressure there for the coming week. It's an unsettled week. The jet stream is probably running to the south of the country, something like that. That's not a pretty good anomaly for the end of August, to be honest. It's going to be changeable. There'll be showers along with spells of rain coming through at times. And of course, because we're on the cool side of the jet, it's also going to be pretty cool. And I think that's a fair reflection, really, of the pattern that we've got at the moment. Of course, winds reverting westerly as opposed to northerly will be a little bit less cold than we have been used to. I do have to say that. So it's a little bit of improvement in terms of the temperature, with the winds becoming more Atlantic based. But even so, it's a pretty cool, changeable type outlook. Now, the second weekly period, going from the 28th to the 4th of September, show that the trough is really sitting to the east of the country then, out to the east. The ridge, very weak sort of ridge, but there's a little splodge of yellow there, is out to the west of the British Isles. So heights are rising a little bit to the west. The trough is being pushed down towards the east. That could be a little bit more unsettled. I don't think it's, it could be a little bit more settled, I should say. I don't think it's particularly warm, because the air flow is still probably sort of west to northwesterly with that. But with the trough lifting off towards the east, it could be a little bit dry, particularly for the west of the country. The east perhaps still at risk of some showers. It's not great, but it is an improvement going through to the first few days of September. And then finally going through to the 3rd and 4th weeks, which takes us from the 4th to the 18th of September. Well, a little bit hard to decipher what's going on with this one. It looks like we're setting up, again, some sort of northern blocking here around Iceland and going off towards Greenland. Ridge of high pressure there. We've got a trough of low pressure down to the south of the country, and the British Isles itself around here is within sort of normal or average type heights, but with the trough down there to the south, the ridge up to the north around Iceland and Greenland, I would suspect it's pretty cool again, with perhaps bringing in sort of easterly or northeasterly flows, really. It could be unsettled down in the south as well. I think the south from this trough would be at risk at times of that trough pushing up and bringing perhaps even some thundery rain into the south. It's quite a tricky sort of anomaly that to pin down for those final 2 week periods, but I don't think it's particularly good with the blocking up there, or the above average heights I should say, which you would assume is hints of blocking up there towards Iceland and Greenland. That's never a particularly good sign, and with the trough to the south, I think that could be relatively cool, and at least in the south, quite unsettled. So that's the latest month-ahead update from the Japanese model. Now let's go on and have a look at the 3-monthly update. This is taking us through the autumn, going from September to November with this update. We'll start off with the Northern Hemisphere view in terms of the 500 millibar height anomalies for September. What the model is seeing as the anomaly for the month of the whole in September is that we've got that ridge out to the east, the above average heights, and then really we're bringing in average sort of heights around the British Isles, and then presumably the jet stream is going something like that. So that implies that the east is perhaps more settled than the west. Now this is in contradiction with what we were just looking at for the month ahead, the latest month ahead from the Japanese model. So quite what's going on there, this anomaly for September that we're looking at here doesn't really tie in with the charts we were just looking at for the month ahead. So that's quite complicated. Also notice below average heights around Greenland, whereas we were just looking a minute ago, but certainly going through towards the middle of September, we've got hints of above average heights around Iceland and Greenland. So I think the Japanese model is being a bit thrown off. Now what's perhaps happened here is that the Japanese model, the JMA, developed this chart, it processed this chart right at the start of August, although we don't see it until later on into August. But I would suspect this has perhaps come before the change in the pattern that's occurred through this August, with blocking setting up around Greenland, a much cooler, much more unsettled scenario than we've been used to, not just through the rest of this summer or the previous part of the summer, but throughout the whole of the year really. We're cooler and more blocked than we have been at any time through 2014. It could well be that the JMA was not seeing that change, that flip that's occurred this August when this chart was generated. So we do have to have some question marks, I think, about what we're seeing here in terms of this 500 millibar height anomaly chart for September. Be very interested to see what's happening. I would tend to side more with the month ahead, which is updating on a weekly basis as opposed to these charts really that are updating just 1 month at a time. So a bit of a contradiction there within the model itself. Going through to October, the Northern Hemisphere view shows that we set up quite a deep trough of below average heights to the north of the country. We've got above average heights quite strongly to the south. That's a classic westerly October. We're bringing the jet stream, a strong jet stream across the Atlantic, running it through the British Isles like that. So it's an unsettled month. We're bringing bouts of wind and rain off the Atlantic. Could be quite a wet month actually, and as you get towards the latter part of October on that sort of anomaly, you could even start to talk about gales and severe gales and sort of Atlantic storms coming in. That's quite a westerly zonal sort of month. Temperatures probably around average with that. It wouldn't be particularly cold, probably wouldn't be particularly warm either. Westerlies in October are usually sort of average type temperatures. And then going through to November, this is the Northern Hemisphere view for November. The trough, the below average heights, is lifting out more towards the Atlantic. We've got this ridge pushing up from the southwest. That's probably quite a mild and dry scenario for November actually. If you're looking for a bit of early winter, that's not particularly great. I think the flow with that would tend to be more sort of southwesterly, if anything. It's not as wet and storming as it potentially could be in October, but it's a sort of a milder type and drier type pattern in November compared to October. Now, just interestingly, there are hints of above average heights setting up over the Arctic around Greenland, up in towards the North Pole. We've got quite a lot of yellow there. Not quite in a position at that point in November to deliver cold weather to us, but it's worth keeping an eye on where that's going as we get through in towards the winter. Because of course, just because you have a mild November does not mean that it can't turn dramatically colder as you get through into winter. So it's going to be worth seeing where that's going, all that yellow that's setting up there over Greenland and over the North Pole. There's no indication on that chart but it would deliver anything particularly cold to us, but as I say, it could be the start of something happening. Now, having a look at the sort of mid-latitude view next from the Japanese model, we'll have a look at temperatures and precipitation. First of all, 500 millibar heights. This is, as I say, for September. Bringing in sort of a westerly flow there. We've got all this yellow to the east of the country, so above average heights to the east, and we're bringing in a westerly type flow off the Atlantic. Temperatures for September on that anomaly are coming out a little bit above average in those cream colours. In terms of the rainfall for September, it's seeing a wetter than average month, on the wetter side than average for most parts of the country, near normal, perhaps down to the east and the southeast, closest to that ridge of high pressure to the west. But I do question whether this is quite right for September. I would go more with what we was looking at the start of the video, which is those 500 millibar heights for the month ahead, broken down into weekly periods, because that's the very latest sort of update off the models. And I think when this was generated, it probably wasn't seeing the flip that has occurred to a cooler, more unsettled pattern. But anyway, it's not particularly exciting in terms of temperatures, and it is indicating generally quite an unsettled month actually, so maybe it is in line with what's going to happen. We'll go through to the second month next, which takes us through to October, and this is the, remember the 500 millibar flow chart for October. We've got the below average heights for low pressure up to the northwest of the country, above average heights down to the south, bringing a strong westerly right across the Atlantic and blasting into the British Isles. It's an unsettled month, I think, and it's also potentially quite stormy, particularly as you get on towards the latter part of the month. The temperatures are coming out a little bit above average. It's a little bit warmer than average again. I'd actually move that down more towards average. I don't think a generally flat westerly flow in October is particularly mild. It's also not particularly cold. I think temperatures are coming out probably around the 30-year average with that. In terms of the rainfall, unsurprisingly, it's a wetter than average month. As I say, it's a strong jet stream that's coming across the Atlantic, so you would expect precipitation anomalies to be coming out wetter than average, and that is indeed what is occurring. So an unsettled October being signalled there, could be quite a wettish sort of month. And then finally going through to November. Remember that November has that trough lifting out more towards the northwest of the country, or going out into the west. We've got ridging building up from the southwest. The flow is going something like that, so it is going more southwesterly. It's a milder, drier pattern in theory. It's not seeing a particularly warm month. It's actually going again for just slightly above average temperatures there, but I would increase that more on that sort of anomaly. I expect a proper mild November with very little in the way of frost or snow likely on that sort of pattern. In terms of the rainfall, it's still seeing a little bit wetter than average for Scotland, but otherwise we're reverting more towards nearer normal. I would put the south probably on the drier side of average actually with that sort of anomaly. So a pretty sort of pleasant November coming up there, with no sign of anything particularly extreme. Although, as we saw in the Northern Hemisphere view, there is the hints of the northern blocking around Greenland and the Arctic, which could be going somewhere as we get through into winter, because as I say, just because you have a mild November, it does not mean that you're not going to get a cold winter, so we'd have to see where that is going. But in terms of the autumn forecast from the Japanese model, it's not seeing anything particularly cold, you have to say. Most of the months are coming out around average to above average, and then particularly October is looking like an unsettled, wet, potentially at times even stormy month with quite a strong jet stream. The September forecast, though, come back to that, because I think there is question marks about what the model is seeing as the anomaly for September, as opposed to when we break it down into weekly periods, which is only just updated, and this update was probably generated towards the start of August. So I would tend to go with what we looked at the start of the video for September, which is probably a cooler scenario actually for September, and maybe quite unsettled down to the south. It's quite a complicated one, so I hope I'm going across okay. When we get through to Sunday, we're going to look at around 8 separate long-range seasonal models to see what they're all showing for the autumn, and then based on that I'm going to produce a forecast for the autumn of 2014. So that's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. The JMA will make up part of that, but we'll only be able to touch on it because I'll have another 7 models to get through. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you tomorrow for the weekend forecast. Bye for now.